Decisions, decisions, decisions. Say that 3 times fast. That's what we have to consider here. Some very difficult decisions to make on today's edition and Greenlight Ventures presentation of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff Deforrest. The first thing we have to decide is, do we go double contrarian in our survivor pool? For the uninitiated, if you're just discovering the program, last week we recommended you go completely against the grain, bet against the most obvious game on the board, which was the Cincinnati Bengals taking on the hapless and likely to be winless, or it seemed at the time, New England Patriots. Patriots on the road, biggest point spread on the board. We're figuring, hey, if you could find one other game there and stay out of that one, there's a remote possibility the Patriots somehow find a way to win. You get a couple of fumbles on the 1 yard line, and the next thing you know, you're cashing. And so you knocked out about 40% of the people in the various pools around the country, especially some of the big ones with millions of dollars at stake. You're still alive. All you had to do is pick one winning game. We barely survived the one that we selected with the Miami Dolphins pulling one out of their ass at the last second and keeping us alive. So we have to go into week number 2 and decide, do we go against the grain again? Or do we just follow what would be a normal logic and don't get cute and take the most obvious game on the board? We'll decide that. And we also have to decide what we're going to do in tonight's ball game. A very tough pair of numbers to play into. Dolphins favored by 2.5 and 49, the over-under in the game. If you are going to bet the game, BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. They have every stat, every matchup, live odds during the game. You want to double down on something. All kinds of great contests all the time. When the game's over, you can head on over to the online casino. You can play blackjack, poker, get in on over 150 slot games that are available. Head to the website today. Get in on all the action. Bet online. The game starts here. Now, a big game to start out week number 2 in the National Football League and taking place at Hard Rock Stadium. It's going to be hot. It is going to be humid. And it is going to be, I think, and a lot of people are speculating, a very pivotal game overall in the AFC East. We have recommended to you that you go ahead and bet the Dolphins in the AFC East. And who better to discuss this game and give us some perspective? And it does look like he's in a bit of a high chair than our good friend. And I've known this guy, I don't know, he might have been at like a Jeff Chandler fight at Miami Highline many years ago when I met him. But maybe it was a little bit after that. But he has covered virtually everything all over the country and is now, I don't know that there's a higher distinction. He is the columnist for the Miami Dolphins for the South Florida Sun-Sentinel. We're joined by the great Chris Perkins here on the show. Chris, how are you, my friend? Thanks for being with us.
Defo, I didn't have time to set my background, so this looks like a hostage video. So,
Yeah.
If somebody will arrange the exchange, I can get a better video here. So, yeah, better background. How are you, Defo?
I'm doing well. I'm torn between a lot of different things, and it's amazing. We're going to make our survivor pool pick and try and stay alive in week number 2, and so many things to consider there. That there look like any number of games that you could take with just tremendous faith, not even have to watch them, and that you were going to get through week number 2, and yet I'm finding myself as confused. Showing you how impossible it is to bet games with the point spread is the fact that in week number 2, you actually would be lining up with a chance to lose a straight up ball game with some of these apparent mismatches that are on the board. Tonight's game is not one of those, though. And the reason we brought Chris on the show is, it's one thing you get all this mathematical stuff and people are giving you trends and things to go by, guides to bet a game. But it's a lot better if you actually see the shit. Right. And Chris is at every practice. He's been following the Dolphins for many, many years now at different times, too. But I watched last week's game and I'm curious to get your opinion because nobody's talking about the game this week. All you're writing about is Tyreek Hill, it seems like.
Yeah, well, here's my thought on this week's game. Go with Josh Allen, right? I mean, the Bills beating the Dolphins. Well, they've beaten them 13 of the last 15. Josh Allen is 11-2 against them. And I'm saying to take the under also. The last two games that they've played at Hard Rock Stadium have been low scoring. Last year, 21-14. And then the year before that, 21-19 Dolphins victory where Buffalo just wilted in the heat and humidity. So that's my recommendations for the game. And you
I
know,
love the fact you went right for the degenerate angle because I was thinking, let's bring on a legitimate journalist here and just get his unbiased picture in terms of not being influenced by the numbers. You go straight for the numbers, which is great.
And you know what, Defo? It's really, I'm going to put them all out there right quick. I picked Buffalo. What did I pick? 23-20, I think I picked. But it's
What
just
kind of hate mail are you generating at the station, audio mailbox?
it's the same. I mean, listen, I pick Buffalo every time because they spank that ass every time, right? I
Wow,
mean,
yeah.
13-15 and Josh is 11-2. Like, I don't care. And here's the thing, Defo. Every time I listen to the Dolphins fans, wow, they don't have Jordan Poyer now. They don't have Micah Hyde. They don't have Tre'Davious White. They don't have Mitch Morse.
They
It
don't have
doesn't
Cornelius
matter. They
Bennett.
have
It
Josh
went to
Allen.
Bruce Smith a couple of times, but people
They,
were screaming that they
yeah,
don't have Bruce Smith anymore.
yeah, I mean it doesn't matter. They have Josh Allen, and even before Josh Allen, it didn't matter. They had Tyrod Taylor. It's Buffalo versus Miami. It's like Buffalo versus Miami back in the O.J. Simpson days, right, where
Yeah.
the Dolphins beat them like 21 straight. It didn't matter, and I think we're in another stretch like that. I've got to see it to believe it. I don't care about injuries. I don't care. Look, and the Dolphins under Mike McDaniel, they are 7-1 in September, 4-0 at home in September. They don't. Josh Allen is in this game. That's where I'm going, Defo.
Wow. I mean, my lean would have been the other way, honestly. But, this is why it's great having a variety of opinions. And you see everything that happens with this team. And they did miraculously win. I mean, lucky to survive that game against Jacksonville on the winning side, as if you don't have the rare Travis Etienne fumble,
Right.
which was that like his first fumble in the last 6 years or something, and he gets stripped, and that changed the entire complexion of the game because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Dolphins. I think that would have game clinching touchdown if he goes in for that score.
Definitely, definitely. And so, yeah, that was a huge, huge play there by Javon Holland. Definitely the play of the game. Next play, you get the Tyreek Hill 80-yard touchdown, and off the Dolphins go. And then the play after that, Elijah Campbell pokes the ball out on the kickoff return. Jacksonville recovered. But, you could just see how that one play by Holland changed everything. It changed the whole tone of the game. I will say this about tonight's game, and you know this very well, Defo. Josh Allen keeps both teams in it at the same time, and
Yes.
and so you can count on some Josh Allen turnovers. But he just puts on that Superman cape in the fourth quarter. But that's one reason why I do pick a close score, because Josh is going to have an interception or a key fumble at some point tonight.
Wow. I mean, we were in total contrast, Chris Perkins, and I'm glad we're soliciting and getting your opinion on this thing. I mean, where are the Dolphins at? The preseason, there's nothing to go by. They didn't play any of their starters. They are going to be missing Raheem Mostert tonight. They do have depth at running back. In fact, they surprised people by drafting that right kid, didn't they? Because you were thinking one position that they were very secure at was running back. However, I don't know what the latest is on Devon Achane. He's going to be game time decision. He would appear to be a crucial component for him offensively. Jeff Wilson, I mean, a very competent, capable running back, as we know, and where do they stack up in that category? Because you would think that once again, obviously, as basic as it is, that they're going to have to get something out of the running game if their passing game is going to click.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think that they're kind of in the same place that they were last season as far as the entire offense and running back specifically. Let's look at running back, where you do have Raheem Mostert. He's 32 years old. He remains injury prone. You have Devon Achane, who both of these guys are speedy backs. Everybody is speedy in that backfield. But Achan, he's still injury prone, right? It's
Yes.
the same as last year. So you bring in Jalen Wright, and he's another speedster, and that formula at running back historically, even up through the last couple of years, it's high risk. That's why you had to get Jalen Wright, because the bulkier guys seem to last longer. Derrick Henry's, although that position just takes a toll on you. Clearly, that's why they don't get paid, because they're so injury prone, and they're just kind of expendable at that point, because they're so unreliable. But the Dolphins
But
keep
somewhat
doubling.
interchangeable also at the same
Well,
time. Yeah.
yeah, but my thing is the Dolphins keep doubling down on that speed formula, and that doesn't add up to durability. The Jeff Wilsons of the world, Chris Brooks, the kid that they cut, those guys seem to last a little bit longer. So I'm not sure how this speed experiment is going to work, Defo. You know what I've said before. It's like, for the graybeards out there will appreciate this. It's like the NFL puts LT and Ronnie Lott out there as defenders, and Mike McDaniel says, "Okay, well, here's Ronaldo Nehemiah and Willie Gault," and it's like, I'm not sure you can win like that, but they're trying. They're trying.
You couldn't win with Nehemiah, who I was a
No.
big fan of as a track star. I had a chance to cover him when he was running the high hurdles, and but I mean, you talk about manos de piedra. I mean, no one had hands of stone. I mean, maybe rivaled only by Richard Castor when he was with the New York Jets, and who was the tight end with the Dolphins that. He couldn't catch a cold, this guy, and he was a big strapping guy many years ago. I'm blanking on his name, and you could count on him dropping virtually anything that was sent his way. But Nehemiah was probably the worst pair of hands in the history of one of the track stars,
Yeah.
or any receiver, maybe in NFL, in the entire existence of the NFL. So a good reference there. Never forget him. Balls would be going right through his hands and hitting him in the face. It was an ill-fated experience. All right, Buffalo, though, let's get into this a little bit, Chris, because you've analyzed this from a lot of different angles, I'm sure, too, coming into this week's game, while busy trying to figure out, what was it, Tyreek? Was it the cop? Was it both of them? And nobody would want to be plastered on the pavement in front of Hard Rock Stadium at 11 o'clock in the morning when
Right.
it's 110 degrees in the shade.
Right.
I mean, how he ended up playing as well as he did. I mean, this guy obviously can shrug off adversity as well as virtually anybody. But Buffalo, as you said, you said earlier, supposedly depleted. They don't have a lot of guys. Stephon Diggs would be the most significant subtraction, I guess, from the lineup there, although he seemed to be at odds with Josh Allen. I mean, was that one of those strange relationships where they had the connection on the field, even though they despised each other while they were playing a game? And so, how many? I mean, how much are the Bills compromised this year, or are they, in your opinion?
No, they are. They are. And look, let's go to defense first. The good news for Buffalo is Greg Rousseau, the former edge rusher, was off to a great start. I think he had 3 sacks last week. I think he was the AFC Defensive Player of the Week for their 34-28 victory over Arizona, I think it was. On the other side, I hear good things about Von Miller. We know he's 138 years old, but he supposedly, and coming off of an injury, but
Yeah.
he supposedly had a really good training camp. So the good news for Buffalo is you do have those edge rushers. The bad news for Buffalo is they're matched up against the strength of the Dolphins' offensive line, right? And we saw that last week with Austin Jackson at right tackle, Teron Armstead at left tackle. Last week, they handled Jacksonville's edge rushers, Trayvon Walker against Austin Jackson, and Josh Hines Allen against Teron Armstead. Walker and Hines Allen had combined for 27 and a half sacks in last season. Austin Jackson and Teron Armstead did a great job against them. I would expect they'll do a great job again tonight. So I think the Dolphins can kind of neutralize Buffalo's best advantage defensively. You go to the secondary, and yeah, they're without some key guys from last year. You started those safeties with Jordan Poyer, who is here, Micah Hyde, who is still out of football, Tre'Davious White, the cornerback, the excellent cornerback. I think he got injured in the first game against the Dolphins. They're without their nickel tonight, Teron Johnson. So it's a very new secondary. Tua and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle ought to be able to feast on them. we go to the other side, Defo. It really, they're without their center, Mitch Morse. He's with Jacksonville. The Dolphins saw him last week. So that's a key component of your offensive line, as the Dolphins will tell you. James Cook is still back there at running back, but, there's no Stephon Diggs. There's no Gabe Davis. Saw him last week with Jacksonville at one of the receivers. They've got Keon Coleman out there from Florida State. They're still decent at tight end, but I keep saying this. They've got Josh
Yeah.
Allen, and Josh. The
You're making
last,
him out like he's Roethlisberger here, just going to be
yep,
swaggering down the field somehow. He always manages to bust like a big 45-yard run against his team, though, too. That
yeah.
dooms them.
Well,
Yeah.
look, Defo, in the 5 games in the McDaniel Tua era that Josh Allen has played, he's 4-1. He's got 15 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions in 5 games. I mean,
Wow.
he feasts on this team.
Yes,
So
he does. Yeah.
yeah, it just, I know I sound like a broken record, but until they can solve Josh Allen, I've got to go with Buffalo. I know they're depleted. I know they're traveling on a Thursday night, but they got Josh.
All right, and you would have great incentive to be backing the local home team here, since you're appealing to their fans with your brilliant columns in the South Florida Sun Sentinel. You can catch Chris Perkins there and online, and you have a podcast working too. Do you not?
I do.
That people can
Dolphins
see
Deep Dive.
all over the world, right?
Yeah. This is Dolphins Deep Dive with Perk every Tuesday at noon on sunsentinel.com. You can catch me with my co-workers, David Feronis and the venerable Dave Hyde.
Oh, you talk about distinguished columnists. I mean, he's up there with virtually anybody
Yep.
in terms of sports columnist fame and distinction. All right, you want to help us with our other problem before we let you go?
Yeah, of course. Let's do it.
Okay, because and these are the decisions that we have to make, and it's interesting because I think the survivor pools point out how fragile it is to have an opinion about a game, especially if you're factoring in the point spread. But when you're not, and you're only in week 2, and you have any number of apparent mismatches on the board, and you're still hard pressed to come up with an opinion here and that you can express with confidence.
Right.
Last week we recommended that everybody go against the Bengals. Pick another game, any other game. I ended up with the Dolphins, and it was insane that I'm very lucky to survive. That literally was survive and move on, Jimmy Valvano time. All right, but it worked because it knocked out 40% of the people in the major pools around the country, where people are giving and keeping track of such statistical material. So that was great. All you had to do was find another winner. We did. People are all knocked out. 40% knocked down in week number 1 with the Bengals. Now, do you double down on that theory and go away from the most obvious game on the board, which would seem to be, at least by point spread differentiation, the Ravens, who you would have to think are going to be hell-bent on beating the Raiders with Gardner Minshew?
Okay.
That would seem to be the biggest mismatch on the board. But that being said, do you stay away from that game and try to find another? And if you do, I mean, there are a couple of theories that are in play here that you could probably bet against the Panthers every week for a while, because they looked horrendous in week number 1. The Giants look bad, but they have a game against the Commanders, so there's a shot at redemption there. The 49ers looked very convincing in their week 1 win against the Jets. They're on the road, though. Would you have faith? Would you go away from that Ravens game and maybe take the Texans over the Bears? Or do you have a game that you think is an absolute cinch to be accounted for straight up?
I don't, but let me ask you this, Steve.
Yeah.
Who is the worst team that is traveling this week? Like
The
a
worst
Carolina
team.
or a Washington. Who is the worst team that's traveling?
Yeah, that would
Where are
have
they?
to be. I'm thinking even though the Bears won, the Falcons might be the worst team that's traveling. They have to take on the Eagles on Monday Night Football.
Nah, not touching that.
That spreads at 6.5. The Saints were impressive in their win over the Panthers, who looked pathetic.
Is
So
Carolina, are they at home?
I believe Carolina is at home. Oh, yeah, they're at home against the Chargers, who I never trust.
Yeah.
It's the haunting ghost of Brandon Staley, even though Harbaugh's the coach there now, that you think, wow, the Chargers will find a way to fuck up a game that ruins your season. So
Oh, wait a minute. Where are the Patriots? Yeah.
the Patriots are home to the Seahawks, who are 3.5-point favorites over the Patriots, with the Patriots at home. Now, they got very lucky to win this game, right? 2
Yeah.
fumbles at the goal line by the
Yeah.
Bengals.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing. Do you go with the standard credo, don't get cute, and just take the Ravens to beat the Raiders and Gardner Minshew, or
Where's that game?
that game is in Baltimore.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's
Take
the game?
that. Take that. Here's the thing, Defo. Week one is often a liar, as you know.
Yes. Yes.
So
That's the game.
you got it. Yeah, you Ravens at home, done deal, done deal.
All right. And Chris Perkins, Sun Sentinel, always a pleasure, my friend. Great analysis on the ball game. We knew you would be the man to go to, and I really respect the fact that, you had some complimentary things to say about the Dolphins' offensive line play,
Yeah.
which we've been debating for the last 10 years, whether it's a makeshift or a patchwork offensive line that we've been going with. And I don't know that we can make the differentiation. But so that was encouraging. But you do like the Bills tonight,
I do.
to especially getting the 2.5
Yep.
and the under in the
Yep.
ballgame. All
Yep.
right. That's going to help us bury the bookie. And you're going straight in with the Ravens. And I think I'm not going to get cute. That's going to be my pick in the survivor pool also. And I'm on the opposite side, though, on the Dolphins game. I think the Finns will win tonight and find a way out of this just tragic spell they've had against Buffalo. And a big mistake, triggered by a big mistake by Josh Allen in the clutch. Late in the fourth quarter, he throws a pick six, and the Dolphins prevail and win by 3. That's going to be my prediction, and I think the game maybe goes over. So we'll see what happens. But thank you so much. Always a pleasure, my friend.
All right.
Chris Perkins. Chris Perkins of the Sun Sentinel, South Florida Sun Sentinel. He does a great, great job. I was agonizing over this. I mean, there are a lot of games you could take in the survivor pool. Ravens look to be the most obvious over the Raiders. The Raiders were not impressive. I'm glad Antonio Pierce got a shot to be the head coach of the team, but really don't offer much. The Ravens were literally toe-to-toe with the Kansas City Chiefs. They've had a long time to mull this thing over. Go back and look at the film, and you know what? We just got to correct these mistakes. I think they do, and they were kind of flat in that first half, but came back and were right there with a chance to take the game. They were going to go for 2, so it was either going to be a 1-point win or loss. I think they probably handle the Raiders in this thing. The Cowboys favored by 6.5 over the Saints. I don't know if the Saints win over the Panthers was an illusion. They put up 47 points. Could the Panthers be that bad? Lions-Buccaneers was another game took into consideration. You would have to think the Lions, favored by 7.5, probably prevail there, but who the hell knows? I mean, it's amazing. I mean, just even having to agonize over this, the other game I was debating taking was the Texans over the Bears. Texans over the Bears. Caleb Williams was unimpressive in spite of the fact that the Bears won. I mean, looked like one of these guys that was going to have a real rough first year in spite of his talent, maybe at least into the second half of the season. And the Texans struggled in their ball game in week number 1, but nonetheless prevailed. And you're thinking maybe they really put it together here. It looks like Diggs and C.J. Stroud are a pretty good connection. But we're going to wimp out and maybe regret this. But week number 2, our selection in the survivor pool will be the Ravens taking out the Raiders straight up to keep us going into week number 3. We used the Dolphins last week and got away with one, and we did bury everybody and bury a lot of books by going against the Cincinnati Bengals in week number 1. So that turned out real well for us. Good luck with your plays. Our thanks to Chris Perkins for joining us here on the show, and should be a very entertaining game. The Dolphins really struggle with Josh Allen. That happens to be a fact. His stats against the Dolphins are remarkable. Accounts for 3+ touchdowns per game. Averaging 280 yards per game passing, always bust their chops with a big run in a ball game at a crucial time. And the Dolphins a little bit compromised offensively, especially if Achane doesn't play, because this guy appeared like he was going to be a real strong weapon for the Miami Dolphins. Last year, got hurt, and he's been injury prone, as Chris mentioned. And what would be, I would think, a considerable factor in the game tonight if he's able to play. He, like a lot of us, is a game-time decision. All right, for the people at Greenlight Ventures and Bet Online, thanks for tuning in. Our good friend Henry doing a great job for us on social media. We always thank Leslie and Joe of No Filter, and happy to have you with us. We'll have the professor tomorrow, outstanding college football handicapper, even though he was 1-3 last week. But nonetheless, I have complete faith in this man. He will win for you over the course of the season. We'll have some other picks for you from handicappers as well, as we see you next time on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.